Okay, this is the payroll year-end webinar. So there will be some updates coming out soon for the 1095-C and 1094-C forms only. There are no W-2 updates, no 1099 updates this year as far as the forms are concerned. But there are for the 1095-C and the 1094-C for the forms and the electronic filing. So there will be updates available soon for that. We will send out email notification as soon as that is available. It's not available quite yet, but it will be available in the next week or so. Updates, of course, are free for everybody with a support contract. As far as the 1095-C and 1094-C, that is to be filed when employees are to employee-sponsored health coverage, so that you can determine they can prove that they have health coverage through your company for their W-2 forms. And you need to determine that basically by talking to your accountant if you need to file that form or not for your employees. We do not support self-insured companies. I know some of you are self-insured. That is not something that we support as far as reporting is concerned. On those forms, you'd have to do that manually. So on W-2s, a lot of times you'll have things at the end of the year that you need to add: auto insurance, third-party sick pay, employer-sponsored health coverage, S-Corp. There's all kinds of different, group life insurance, all kinds of things that you may have to put in before the end of the year, before the end of 2017. 401k, if your owners want to put a lump sum into 401k at one time. That is all stuff that should be done prior to closing out the year. That is all special circumstances that have to be done on like a per time card or a per week basis. So sometime before your last week of the year, you would enter these special time cards. And under file payroll time cards, you would basically enter these special things as a time card. And then the special earnings get entered as just normal weekly time cards, or sick if it's a sick pay time card. And we do have instructions for you on how to do all of that. So you can call in for support and get specific instructions depending upon what you have to do. The last payroll of the calendar year is normally
Child learn how to do year-end payroll.
Normally the last payroll of the calendar year would be, if you look at the sheet that I have up on the screen here, depending upon when your pay period ends. If your pay period ends on Saturday and you pay on Thursday, for example, your last pay period of 2017 would be December 23rd, because that would be paid on December 28th. Your payroll for Saturday, December 30th, gets paid on January 4th, so that would be considered your first payroll of 2018. So after December 23rd, you should close out your year and follow the year-end checklist. Now, we do have a year-end checklist that is attached in the document that I sent you. So it's a calendar year-end checklist. You would basically follow these steps. It gives you step-by-step instructions on what to do after you've completed your last week of payroll for the year. You print your fourth quarter reports. You print your year-end reports. Your 1095 forms and electronic filing can be done later using the employee history file. Same with the W-2 forms. Those can be done later using the employee history file. So you don't need to print these last 4 items on this checklist. You just go up to that point. You have your calendar year-to-date reports, your monthly deduction report for 401k, and then a miscellaneous report, which gives you all your other deductions for the year. And then after all that's complete and you've reviewed it and you're pretty sure that it's all accurate, you would back up and zero out your calendar year-to-date employee file. Somebody is still not muted on the phones. Could you guys make sure that you all self-mute? Because we can still hear somebody in the background. I'm not sure who it is. I thought I've muted everybody, but somebody's not muted. Thank you. Once you zero out your employee file, it creates a backup and it creates an employee history file of the 2017 employee file. So then that history file, you can still print reports from it, and you can still go back and print reports. So if you're want to reprint some payroll reports for the fourth quarter, and if I go to report payroll quarterly, and let's say I need to reprint my 941, sorry, the screen not properly sized, I can select a history file year just by going to year, and I can select a previous year besides the current year, or I can choose this. I can go down and decide which year I want to print by selecting that. So I can go back to my prior year and I can print a report from the history file. So all of the reports that you would be running at this point are able to be printed from the history file. But if you need to reprint them for any reason, after you printed them the first time for the checklist. So on this checklist, after you've done the zero, then you would make your changes to the federal tax tables. And that is in admin, payroll, tax tables, federal. Now, those changes have not been released yet, so we do not have that information for you at this time, but as soon as they are released, we do check that almost daily. And as soon as they are released, we will send out an email notification. You'll probably also get a notification like you did that it's going to be posted on our website, and you can go to our website and look at that. I think a lot of stuff now they're trying to put on our website versus sending you out attachments with paper copies. They're trying to make it available on the website now, so you can just go to the website and look at it or print it from the website versus having to print it from an attachment. You would also want to update your state tax tables. For Illinois, Illinois is the only state that we will give out information and tell you what the changes are. Any other states, I know a lot of you work in multiple states. Those states, you're responsible for getting that information on your own. And usually you can get it from the internet. You go to, like if you're going for the state of Georgia, it's ga.gov, or Indiana would be in.gov. You can usually go to that website, those websites, and find their current state tax tables. We can help you find that on the internet, and we can direct you to the right spot, but we won't publish those for you with the normal tax tables that we send out. There are also on this year-end checklist, there's steps for accounts payable and accounts receivable, job cost, and general ledger. Those steps can be done later when you're ready to close out December or after you've closed December for those modules. Those modules do not have to be done before you do the next month. You can enter stuff into the next month without closing those modules out for December. Payroll is the only one that is time sensitive, where you cannot start the next year's payroll before you do these steps. You must do these steps first before you process any payroll for 2018. Now, if that last week in December you want to force into 2017, you can do that at the time that you create your time card header file. So if I'm going to create a new time card header file, and let's say I'm going to create one for December 30th, and I'm going to say, okay, it's going to say does not exist. Do you want to create? Yes. So it's going to put it in accounting month and year December because it always matches the date of the pay period. I can change that to January if I want to. Or if I want to force it into December and I want to date my checks December 31st, I can keep that 17. I can change this check quarter as long as I haven't zeroed anything out yet. I can change this check quarter to the 4th, and I can go down to check year of 2017. So I can force this into 2017 if I wanted to show on the W-2s for that year. But you have to have the check date December 31st or a December check date. You could not date the check in January. So there is a way to force that if you want to, or you just let it default how it normally does, and you put it into 2018, but you must make sure that you've closed out these steps. Now, you can enter time cards into a pay period for 2018 before you close the year, but you cannot calculate checks. So if you wanted to enter time cards in advance, you could open up the first week of 2018, enter time cards, but you cannot calculate checks, as they will calculate with the wrong amounts because the tax tables will not have been changed. And they will calculate based on their year-to-dates too, which are 2017 year-to-dates, because it does look at the year-to-dates when it calculates. So if you want to force your payroll, you can change this to be the fourth quarter of 2017, or you can let it default to 2018, and that would be the first pay period of the year. If you need to do a layoff check, let's say before the end of the year, you've already closed out, December 23rd was your last pay period, you've closed out the year, and now all of a sudden you've got to do a layoff check for this year. You would have to, well, there's no way to reopen the year, so you would have to do the layoff check in next year in 2018. I know a lot of times the union will not allow that to happen. So you can open an extra week as long as you haven't closed the year yet. You can open an extra week of 2017 to do a layoff check for it. But it does have to be like an off week or just a fake week that you would open up to do your layoff check. So after you have completed your last payroll of the year and you've completed the calendar year-end checklist, if it's the end of your fiscal year, there's also a fiscal year-end checklist, which has some payroll steps in it. So if your fiscal year ends on December 31st as well, you need to do the fiscal year-end checklist before you continue on with your next week. And there's just 2 steps for payroll, just some reports and then zeroing the fiscal year totals. Again, the other steps for accounts payable, accounts receivable, job costs, and general ledger can be done when you're ready to close out December for those modules. And that does not have to be done at a specific time. That can be done 3 or 4 months into the new year. After you have done all those steps on the calendar year-end checklist, you may proceed with your payroll for the beginning of the first year, or for the beginning of the new year. If you have special stuff like cost of employer-sponsored health coverage, we have included instructions in this packet of how to record those amounts on a per pay period basis, which means you'd have to have been doing it all along. So this gives you an option to record the amount per pay period, which means every week you would have been doing these steps or would have been adding this deduction on a weekly basis. If you're going to do it just as a one-time amount, then there are instructions here for one entry to record the amount for the entire year. So the employer-sponsored health coverage would be recorded one time on a time card. You would have to have a deduction set up for cost of employer-sponsored health coverage. It tells you here how to do it. The W-2 code is box 12, or the W-2 box is 12, code is double D. It tells you to enter the deduction on the employee file. It tells you how to set the type, the frequency, the rate, which is the amount. You'd enter a time card for non-taxable pay that has a day of the week of N for non-taxable. Tells you to enter a non-taxable amount for the amount of the health coverage that's going to show on the W-2 form. Then you would compute checks, and then you want to go into review void checks to make sure that there's no taxes that are being deducted or any other deductions, and you want to zero out anything else that's showing up besides that non-taxable amount. Now, this is similar steps to what you would do for third-party sick pay, for auto usage, for any of those other items that you have to add on to the W-2 to show in a certain box prior to the end of the year. When you do print your W-2 forms, you should have already run the W-2 totals report, and that's part of the report's payroll year-end is your W-2 totals. And that shows you what your W-2s are going to be. The W-2 forms and the electronic filing can be done at a later date. We've put in the Social Security limit for this year so that when you're asked that, when you go to print the report, the forms, you are asked what the Social Security limit is for the year. So that would be, you would put that $127,200 in that spot there. And this would actually be out of your history file, so that would be the year of 2017. And then you would be ready to show the W-2s to the screen just by clicking OK, and it will show you the W-2s that it's going to print. These print on the pre-printed forms that you should have already ordered from us, or if you haven't, you can give our office a call, and Felicia will take your order for W-2 forms. There's two people per form, and you basically print the form 6 times to get 6 different copies. On 1095 data entry, if you do have to put in information on your employees, in the employee file on the year-to-date totals tab, there is a section for 1095C entry. So if I go to File, Payroll, Employees, and I look at my year-to-date totals, here are the 1095 boxes. If I check mark that box, these all become active. If I put an offer code in here, if I say all 12 months, it's going to go into all 12 months. Or I can do month by month, depending upon what the circumstances are for that employee. These do have to be filled out in order for the 1095, 1094s to print. You can do this in the current file, or if I want to, I can do it in the history file. I can wait until after the year is closed, and I can go to the history file, and I can go ahead and put that information in here. You're going to be printing that stuff out of the history file. So if it's after you've closed out 2017, you would go to the history file to do it. If you want to get a start on it before you close, you can do it from the current file. We do have an option to import from an Excel file. And we do have an Excel workbook that we can send you that you can work on and enter the information in. To import the file, there is an option under File, Payroll, 1095C Import. And you would select that option. You would browse out and find the Excel sheet that you put all your calculations in. And then you would select options if you're just doing for 1 month or for all. Mostly you would just leave it defaulted to all. And you would say OK, and it would import the information into there. Now that Excel sheet, don't think I have a copy of it here. Okay, so here is, and we can send this to you from support. You can call into support and ask if we can send this worksheet to you. Some of you may already have it. This is a worksheet that you can enter the payroll year in here just by typing in the number. You can enter these questions like print 1095-C, yes or no. The drop-down arrow gives you options, yes or no. Offer codes. Drop-down gives you the different offer codes. This will set the offer code the same on everybody. Minimum value coverage. You can set the amount if you want. You can set the safe harbor code. Again, this sets the same safe harbor code on everybody. Okay. You have the beginning and ending unions. We just included everything, and beginning and ending employees. You can change this information. You can put your first union and your last union if you just want to do it for a certain union or a certain range of employees if you have confidential and you just want to do it for your confidential employees. You would click Get Data, and that, I don't know that this will work, but it will go out and bring in all the employee information. So every employee will be listed here, just like you see this first one. So just like you saw that first one, on this file here, all the employees would be listed with their hours worked. It goes out and it finds the hours that they worked and it puts them in each month. And then you could come in here and make changes to it. You could change the hours if you want to, or you could change the amounts, the offer codes, the schedule codes. So for each employee, you would determine what goes in here and make the corrections as needed. And then once this is done and saved, you would then import it. After you have finished with that and you've imported it, then you will be ready to run your 1094, or print your 1095 forms, rather. So after you have imported the file, you could go ahead and print your 1095 forms. The 1095 forms print on blank paper. They do not need to be purchased. There's no form to be purchased on that. So under Reports, Payroll, Year End, you've got your 1095-C forms. And that will just bring up a dialog box, and it will look in the history file for the employees, and it will print. You can print instructions with each form, or just at the end, you can truncate the Social Security number. Those do not exist, so it would then populate the forms on your screen, and then you could print them to plain paper. Same with the 1094-C form. Once you've got all the 1095s printed, you would print the 1094-C form, and again, it would populate and print on plain paper. There are new deadlines which were in place last year. You used to have sometimes until February to do some of these filings. But W-2s have always been forms to the employee by January 31st. And you used to have more time to file forms to the IRS, but now you do have to have them in by January 31st, as well as electronic filing has to be in by January 31st. So whether you file paper forms or electronic forms, those all have to be in by January 31st now for W-2s and W-3s. For 1095-Cs and 1094-Cs, those paper forms must also be furnished to the employee by January 31st. To the IRS, you have until February 28th to file the paper forms, or if you're filing electronically for 1095s, 1094s, those are due by April 2nd. Normally it would be March 31st, but I believe March 31st is a weekend this year, so they give you till April 2nd. If you have to file 1099 forms, those are due by January 31st as well. Paper forms to the recipient, to the IRS, and the 1096, or electronic filing of 1099s are due to the IRS by January 31st. You can print 1099 forms out of our software. So on the employee, or excuse me, on the vendor, file accounts payable vendors on page 2. There's 1095 code box and adjustment amounts, and if you withheld income tax or state tax, state withholding tax, you could put those amounts here. The only 1099 code the only one that we support is the non-employee compensation one for box 7. That's the only one that we support as far as printing. The federal tax ID reads from this field up here, so you would need to put in their federal tax ID number if it's a company or a corporation, or the Social Security number if it's an individual. So once those are filled out and they actually had a check in the year of 2017, you would go to report accounts payable and 1099 forms. And then you would put in the tax year and the amount. Normally you only have to give a 1099 form for anybody who made over $600. So the amount has to be greater than or equal to the $600. And then it would print up or show you a display of what's going to print. These, again, are printed on pre-printed forms. So you can order those from us. We do have 1099 forms that you can order. And if you do purchase the forms from us, we do guarantee that they will print in the boxes. And if they don't, we will make it work. We will correct it. Same with the W-2 forms. If you purchase them from us, we guarantee that they print properly. The W-3 form we print in a crystal report, as well as the 1099 or 1096 form. Those are both crystal reports that you can have sent over and print from our software. You can print them through the Crystal Reports viewer. And we have the 1096 form, and we have the W-3 transmittal form, which both print on pre-printed forms. So basically it would ask you questions, give you parameters to fill out for the control number, total number of forms, W-3 year. So it will make you enter the information as you go down the list. Now, the Social Security limit. So if I add in 2017, I do the Social Security limits. Third-party sick pay and third-party sick pay tax withheld. You do not have to enter that. That will calculate if it exists. And because I'm using demo data, this probably will not produce the correct information. Oh, it did. So but then that would print on the pre-printed form. And all those forms do need to be in by the 31st. The only ones you do have some time on are the 1095C and the 1094C to the IRS. All other forms have to be in by January 31st. We do recommend that you keep a backup of before you zero out your employee file, before you do the zero step, step number 6 on the year-end payroll year-end checklist. We do recommend that you make sure you have a legitimate backup tape from the night before or prior to doing this, so that in case we do need to restore, we can restore from the backup tape. So you're going to want to make sure that your backup was successful the night before and that the tape actually has the backup of your current data so that in case you need to go back to it, you can. You don't want to find out that it didn't work when you need it to try to restore to get back to open up 2017. Now, if there are items like third-party sick pay that you don't receive until after, like sometimes you might not receive that information until mid-January. You've already closed, you've already started payroll for 2018, but you need to get that on the W-2 for 2017. We can go behind the scenes and enter some wages onto the employee's 2017 file if we need to. So you can just call the support department and one of us could go in behind the scenes, add those wages to their 2017 file so that they will show on the W-2 the correct way. We prefer that you do it all beforehand, but I know things happen and a lot of times that third-party sick pay does not come in time. We don't have the tax changes yet for the new year. So like I said before, when we do get those, we will be sending out another email notification. If you're not sure when your fiscal year ends for general ledger, you can look at that under Admin, General Ledger Controls. Your fiscal year start month and your fiscal year end month will show up here. So this company, based on a calendar year, their end month is 12. In Admin, Payroll, Tax Tables, this is where you would make your changes to your tax tables for federal. The federal changes, things that normally change, are going to be your standard exemptions, your Social Security limits. Usually the Social Security percentages do not change. The additional Medicare usually does not change. The single and the married tab, these will be amounts that will change. So that will all be a part of the email that we send you showing you what has changed. And then you will come in here and fill in the amounts for single and married. For the state tax tables, under state and local, it normally comes up to a obscure state like Alberta or Alaska because we have all of the states listed in the state tax table for our companies that work in other states. So you would use your binoculars, find Illinois, come in here, and typically what changes for Illinois is the exemption, and then the percentage. We recently had a change, so I don't expect it to change again, but we never know. The single and the married percentage is changed here. A lot of people want to change the percentage here under sales tax percentage, and it does not go there. It goes back here on the single and married tabs. The SUT, which is your state unemployment. State unemployment, they should send you either an email or a notification, a paper notification by mail that shows you what your experience rating is going to be for this new year of 2018. You should have already received that from them. And that will show you what your SUT percentage will be based on how many unemployment insurance claims that you've had. That sets what your rating is going to be. So this is where you would change that when you get that information, but you don't want to change it until after you start, when you change your tax tables for the new year. And I'm not sure about the gross limits yet. That has not been released yet either. If you do work in other states, you would find, like if, for example, you work in Indiana, you would just find the Indiana tax table and make the changes on the single or married tab. And then if you pay state unemployment, I don't know if Indiana has that, you would enter that information here. Again, if you need help with other states, we can help you, but we don't provide you normally with that information. if you're unsure and you built the time card header, but you're unsure what you built it for, you can go to Admin Payroll Time Card Header, and you can look at the time card header. Now it's going to come up to an old one because it comes up to the first record in the file. If I use my binoculars, I can go down to the end, and I can look at the last one that I did, and I can see what I built it for. And then I could change it if I wanted this to be the first quarter of 18. I could change that, or if I wanted it is the first quarter and I want to change it to the fourth quarter and I haven't closed the year out yet, then I could do that. That's the key. If you've closed the year, you can't go back. If you haven't closed the year, then you could change it and put it in the fourth quarter of 17 if you so desire. If you have to enter new deductions, for example, you have third-party sick pay or you have group life insurance or auto use and you haven't ever had that before, you would have to add a new deduction for that. And a third-party sick pay deduction would look similar to this. If it's a deduction, it does have to have a GL account number. And if it's to show on the W-2, then it should have a W-2 box and a code. The W-2 code is J. You can find a listing of the W-2 codes on the back of the W-2 forms. One of the pages of the W-2 form has a listing of the codes that you would use for each different deduction. Now, auto use is a big one, and that generally has to go in box 14. So if you wanted to set up a new auto use one, because this company doesn't happen to have one, I would just put in auto use. A short description would be auto. I could do F12 in my GL account ID to find out what I could use. And we would normally have to have some type of auto use, but I don't have one. I'm just going to use the clearing account for now. The important part is the W-2 box and the W-2 code, which in this case is just auto use. It doesn't exist. Okay, so it'll be box 14, W code auto, should be auto use. And then you would go to File, Payroll Employees, to their Deductions tab, and you would have to add that deduction on there. And normally, if you're doing it for just one amount at the end of the year, it's going to be an amount. And it's going to be every, and then let's say they get $500 for auto. That's going to be the deduction. You would save that. Then you would enter a time card. Change this to 2017. And then I'm going to add Dwight. You don't need a union on any of the special earnings stuff that you would enter. Okay. So then on the day code, I could use a W because I do want it to be taxable. And I could put in my taxable amount. Now, my auto use is going to be Social Security and Medicare taxable. So I can't just put a taxable amount of $500. I have to figure out what the tax is going to be on that. So if I take my $500 and I divide it by 0.9285, that'll give me my amount that will figure up my Social Security and Medicare. So I can say that it's going to be $38.50. It's going to be my taxable amount. So I've got my time card in here for my auto use. I can save that. Now I can go calculate my check. When I calculate my check for something like this, I may want to uncheck 401k or 125 and other deductions. If it has union deductions and stuff or other deductions, child support, I wouldn't want all that to come on there. I just want to calculate taxes. It's the same thing you would do with bonus checks or any other additional check that you're going to do. He already has a check in the current week and you don't want to take out 401k twice or child support twice or the 125s, you can uncheck those. Say okay, it's going to say my check calculation is complete. I'm going to go to review. I'm going to look at that check and I'm going to say that I don't want federal, so I'm going to zero out federal and I'm going to zero out the state. And it's slightly off. Should come up to there. Should come up to $500. So I would change this so that my deduction did not come in either. All right. So we're going to recalculate that because I do want all other deductions because I want my auto use deduction to come in. So now when I go to look at that check, it's still not coming. I can manually select that deduction. I don't know why it's not coming in. But regardless, you would zero out the state and federal taxes. You would make sure that the net pay would be zero, that the auto deduction shows up on the bottom here under deductions. And then you could go ahead and print this to a fake check number. So when you enter all the special earnings stuff, it will normally be a $0 check that you're going to be printing, especially the third-party sick pay, the auto use, the group life insurance, the S-Corp, 401k deposits. It all will net out to a $0 check. So your deduction would be the amount of your taxable income plus taxes. Well, that concludes today's webinar. I can't think of anything else that I haven't gone over already. If you guys have any questions at all, you can contact support and we can review anything with you that you may not have understood or wasn't clear. Thank you all for attending, and there will be a video that will be posted on our website that has this webinar attached to it that you could view at a later date. All right, thank you again for attending, and we will talk to you soon.
Button.